Well, it took some getting here. There's a parade going on in town today, but I was finally able to make it to the law enforcement center. We literally, it's a law enforcement lives matter sign
For
just an outrage from Christian to the law enforcement community, and know that there are people out there that support him.
I'm from the Steele County Times.
Oh, okay.
So I saw you walking here, and I thought, oh, that might be a good story.
I didn't know there was a parade going on in town here today, so I had to drive all over, but I got here. It's a good time to get the message out.
Yeah, definitely. Mind if I talk to you real quick?
No, go ahead.
So what's your name?
Todd.
Todd. Your last name?
Pearson. Pearson.
Where are you from?
Actually, I live in Spring Valley.
Thanks for not letting anybody die on the parade route.
No kidding, right?
Yeah, no joke.
Oh, you did.
And what brings you here?
Well, the church that I happen to attend is in Albert Lea, so it's kind of in our sphere, and
Okay.
and I have a particular passion for people in law enforcement because I have a brother that serves in that capacity, and I know what it's like for them, and I know what it's like to worry about even a officer in a small town, what they face and what they deal with, and it's pretty easy for people today to, quite frankly, to not understand law enforcement and to resent the authority that they have, and I just want them to know that the general public supports them, and that Christianity especially supports law enforcement. I didn't get your name. What was that?
Rick.
Rick. And what paper are you with?
Steele County Times.
Okay.
In Blooming. Do you do this quite a bit then? Or?
This is my first chance to get to Owatonna, but Austin and Albert Lea, some other places.
Just this year, or have you always done
this is my first time doing this specifically for law enforcement outreach. I always try to stop and say hi to officers when I see them, but I think in the last year and a half, 2 years, it's a friend of mine who's a retired Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputy started doing some of this with all the attacks on law enforcement that have been pretty blatant, and we just kind of took a cue from him, and we do this together. He actually lives down in Davenport, Iowa, and he hits a lot of the agencies in his area, and I'm working to get to the agencies in my area, and decided to come over here today. No idea there was a parade.
Well, it was good timing.
Yeah.
Were you just passing through then, or?
I intentionally came over here today to do this and something else, and my timing was off, but it was great. But yeah, I specifically came over here to reach out to the law enforcement community today.
You usually do it by yourself, then?
Most of the time I'm by myself, but I have a friend, and
Alarm panic.
that'll go with me when he's available, when he's free.
Down by
And, do you have a camera then, or?
Yeah, I wear a GoPro, honestly, just because you never know what kind of reactions you're going to get from people, and
Sure.
and I just like to be able to record in case somebody's irate, or
you didn't go the right
or
way.
even somebody.
Did that at all?
This way.
I've had a few conversations with people who thought it was out of line, but for the most part, it's supportive. You know.
Why do they think it's out of line?
I think that one of the biggest issues is that people see law enforcement as, well, it's a career choice. They see it as a career field for people who don't care, which I find ironic, and a lot of times
A career built for people who don't care?
a career field or a career built for people who don't care, or they like to be in positions of power. In my experience there, again, with a brother who serves and has served in law enforcement for over 20 years, is that they're the most caring people. and it's a hard career field to be in. Even if they're never under the gun, literally, they go to a lot of ugly scenes, domestics and deaths, and it's easy to forget about what they do when the limelight's not on them or the negative press isn't on them. I wasn't expecting this today. I would have had a whole sheet of interview questions to
Well, I just
answer.
saw it. I was driving by and I'm like, oh, that looks interesting. You said your brother is a police officer?
He is, yep.
And where?
Actually, he was in Freeborn County for quite a while, and he was in Olmsted County, and now he's over in the little town of Caledonia full time.
So what are some of the things that you've found that they go through from your
Well,
experience?
you know, you can only go to so many fatal accidents and see kids that are victims of drunk driving or respond to domestics and have to deal with irate domestic partners who can turn on a dime, and you have to bottle that up because it's a career field where you're not allowed to show any kind of emotional response at all, really, and you certainly aren't allowed to have any kind of emotional needs. And so law enforcement bottles that up, officers bottle that up quite a bit, and they tend to go home and not really even be able to talk about it with their significant others, their spouses, or whoever or even in their families. You can't really tell them everything that they see, and it changes them. And oftentimes they know people support what they do, but there aren't a lot of people that stop and thank an officer just randomly. And I know it brightens their days when maybe they're having a rough day. I was on my way down and one of the captains stopped me as I was walking by, and he said, "Thank you." Did I talk too fast, say too much?
Yeah, that's fine though.
You could shorthand it. It's
yeah. You said you had a captain.
one of the
stop.
captains from here in town stopped me and thanked me. And there again, from coming from my worldview as a Christian, Romans 13 very specifically tells us we're supposed to respect those that are in positions of authority because they serve. Thanks, guys. They serve as God's ministers of justice. We may not always like that justice, but they do serve as God's ministers of justice.
Is this kind of a movement then within your church that you send people out to do this?
Our church in particular isn't sending a whole group of people out. It's just the church that I come out from my church, and there's a group of like-minded Christians who are affiliated with this, and from a broad spectrum of churches as far as where they're located. I've got a friend from Los Angeles who lives in Davenport now who does this, and there's another one of our friends who's in Omaha, and there are others who are really starting to pick up on this and going out. And it's not to downplay the importance of anybody else's life by any stretch of the imagination. And I think that's one of the things that's let me remember.
It's not to downplay.
It's not to downplay the importance of anybody else's life. It's to really remind people that law enforcement serves because everybody else's lives matter. And sometimes, and not sometimes, very often, law enforcement lives matter because they lay their lives down for other people, sometimes people who hate them. So you think back to Dallas last year, at a rally that was very much directed at animosity towards law enforcement. It was law enforcement officers who died protecting the people who were protesting them. And that's a beautiful thing when you think about it.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. And there aren't a lot of people that would do that.
Yeah. Do you plan to do more of this?
Absolutely. Well, it's Minnesota, so it depends on how the weather goes. And so.
And then you're just gonna randomly hit different communities?
It depends on my days off, and so, I'm going to be looking to hit this, even smaller towns that maybe have their own independent police department. Because there again, you look, Owatonna may not be a giant city, but it's bigger than a lot of the communities around it. But there are a lot of small towns that have 4 or 5, 6, 7 officers who outside of their own communities, nobody knows who they are and what they do.
Yeah.
And there again, it's a dangerous place to be.
Yeah.
Small towns have a lot of danger in them too. You never know where the next domestic with the angry partner is going to be with a gun or a knife.
Well, interestingly, the officers that have been killed in this area, I don't think there's ever been one from Austin, Albert Lee, Owatonna, but there have been Blooming Prairie, Hayfield, Claremont. So.
Yeah. Well, and even back in the 70s in Rochester, there was an officer that was killed in the parking lot of the mall.
Yeah. It's crazy. So, how long are you out then when you usually come out?
Depends on my schedule, and it depends on the weather, and it depends on whether or not I remember to bring my water bottle, which I forgot because
It's not too bad today.
No, it's not too bad, but sometimes we'll be out for an hour, depending on the traffic. I might be out for 2-3 hours, and if people want to stop and talk, and ask me why I do what I do, I'll stop and talk to them.
Yeah. Do you get a lot of people that do come up to you?
It varies. It varies on the time of day and the place where you are. So get a lot of, especially if you're at, like in Austin, there's a stoplight right on the one corner by the law enforcement center, the government center, and so you get a lot of people that'll sit at a light and read it and have a small conversation with you. But I'll have people that'll swing by and stop and talk, and I'm encouraged by that, and I'll get some people that'll challenge me. And more than anything, I just want the officers to see. I want to be able to take enough time for people on the shift to come by. And what I've noticed is that all it takes is 1 or 2 to see it, and then they'll get on their phones and call their brothers or sisters in uniform, and next thing you know, you'll get 5 or 6 guys will drive by in 10 minutes and wave, and it's nice to see the smiles on their faces.
What is the greatest thing that you want people to come away with?
Well,
the message.
The biggest one is that, how do I want to say this? The biggest part of the message is that they're again coming from a Christian worldview. God has ordained authority to control society, and that doesn't have to be in an authoritarian way, but they're there to control society through keeping criminals from running rampant and protecting citizens. And when you have a proper view of that, and sometimes it's whether or not you're a Christian, if you just have a proper view of what authority means and what proper submission to authority means, your life is going to be just different. On just a strictly a moral level, your life is going to be far different. And for me, when I look at law enforcement officers, I'm reminded of what God has done in His mercy and His grace for us in giving us law enforcement officers. Because I think of what the world would be like without them. And I want people to see that, and I want people to see law enforcement and think of God. And that doesn't mean every officer is a Christian. That doesn't mean every officer follows and has the same worldview that I do. But I do want people to stop and think positively about law enforcement, and I want them to think about God and what He's done, like I said, through His mercy and grace in giving us them. It's a very loving thing to appoint people to be in positions of authority. Even when they're pulling you over for running the stop sign or going too fast. And it's not always easy to say thank you, officer, for writing me a ticket.
It's a very loving thing to...
It's a very loving thing to appoint people into positions of authority to control the evildoer. And we see a lot of evildoers in our society today.
And just back up a little bit, you said when you look at law enforcement, you're reminded that what God has done in His mercy and grace
to suppress or quell evil through those ministers of justice. Romans 13 says that those who serve do not bear the sword in vain.
What's your feeling about some of the things that have been going on in our society and around the country, toward law enforcement over the last few years?
Are you talking, like the violence or even just the protests and
the violence, I guess.
I think it reflects pretty poorly on our society today when we see people who, without the full benefit of all the facts, are willing to point and place blame on the men and women who are in a position to sorry, it got loud there for a second. To place blame on the men and women who are in a position to enforce the laws and should be given the same benefit of the doubt that every other citizen is given, innocent until proven guilty. Because a lot of times what we see is a rush to judgment on law enforcement. They're not, as soon as a story comes out, that officer is guilty in some people's eyes. And that's what I think has led to a lot of the violence and a lot of the hatred and the animosity. And people, I think, forget too is that yes, law enforcement works for them, that they work for the people, but they are also citizens themselves. And every law enforcement officer I know recognizes that. They do not consider themselves better than anybody else. And they're not just there for a job. It's not just a career for them. It's not just a paycheck. Most of the ones that I know do what they do because they genuinely want to help people and they love their fellow man.
Wow. No, you're not. True.
All right. Anything else?
I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't expecting you to.
Yeah. And you've had no, connection to law enforcement other than your brother?
My brother is the person who's I'm most connected to in that career field. So.
And hopefully the message will sink in, with people.
I hope. Every movement that gets big starts with one person. There's no movement that just morphs out of nothing into a giant movement. It starts with one person and goes from there. Like my friend Tony. He was the first person that I saw doing this, and it's growing.
Well, good. I'll grab a picture of you if you don't mind.
I'm not much of a smiler, so you're gonna just get grumpy old guy is what you're gonna
Grumpy
get.
old man. Not old.
No, I am. I just turned 47 today, so.
I got you by 2 years. I'll be 50.
You're doing better than I am.
I'll be doing 50 in about 2 months.
What works best for you?
Lighting here. Well, heck, I'm gonna take the law enforcement center in the back now.
You want?
Right here. You can stay there.
Stay there?
Yeah,
That work?
yeah.
Oops. Get something usable?
Oh yeah. Good.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate
Thanks for
it.
stopping and asking. And
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for doing that.
anytime.
It will be a good message to get out to our readers.
Yeah. Do you guys have an online presence then, or
Yeah, we do actually.
you got a card that I
Let
can?
me see if I have any left here.
You're like me. I've been meaning to order business cards with my name and email on them, and I never get around to it, so I end up having to write it on the back of somebody's random piece of paper.
I have it, but I guess I'll just write it down. Do you anticipate hitting Dodge County at all at any point?
I do.
'Cause we have a paper over there too, so
Yeah, I'd like to be able to get over that direction. It depends on my work schedule. So
what do you do? I forgot to ask you that.
this does not go in the paper.
Okay.
I actually happen to work for the Steele County Sheriff's Office within the detention center, so
Okay.
I'm not a street cop. So
Okay.
I'm not a real cop, as people will remind me on a regular basis. But that came late in life for me, so. But I would prefer that part stay
Okay.
out, because I would be doing this regardless of what I do, and I don't want people to think that's the only reason I'm out. So I
Right.
don't bring it up because there's more. My driving reason for doing this, honestly, is because of my friends and family in law enforcement. So.
Yeah.
And it started long ago with my brother going into the career field. So
Good. Well, great.
So
Thank you.
I appreciate you keeping that part to yourself.
No
So
problem at all. All right.
well, it's nice to meet you.
Yeah,
and thank
same
you for
here.
stopping. And
You bet.
maybe
Have a good
we'll
weekend.
maybe we'll run into you in Dodge County in a
Yeah,
random.
Casson, Manorville.
So do you cover that up there too?
I'm up
So
there. I kind of float between both, but yeah, I may use this over in that paper too.
Oh.
If you're planning to be there. So
I plan on getting up there. I just don't know when it'll be. I'm going back to day shifts on Monday, so I'm going to have. When I'm on nights, I work 12-hour shifts, and so when I'm on nights, I get home and I sleep half the day away. And so, especially this time of year, by the time you get out of bed and drive somewhere, it's and it gets colder.
Yeah.
And I'm getting old, so
I hear you.
my feet don't warm up the way they used to. So,
yeah. Well, good. Well, thank you.
Well, here. Thanks a million.
Thank you.
Thanks for stopping. I do.
Yeah,
I
you
really
bet.
appreciate it. Have a
All
great
right.
day.
You too.
Oh. Hey guys.
Hi.
Well, that was nice. I hope the conversation was encouraging. Yeah, y'all have a great day. God bless.
Were you an officer?
Nope, just a citizen, sir.
This is ridiculous what's going on.
Well, wait a minute, before I say I agree.
Yeah.
What do you mean? It's ridiculous what's happening in the law enforcement community?
There's no rap sheet involved shootings anymore. They're all police involved shootings on our television set. And practically every time they've got a rap sheet a mile long, you know?
Well, it's an unfortunate side effect to living in a fallen world.
Yeah.
So
It's tragic.
it's part of what we do, but that's why God has given us law enforcement officers, is to help curb violence and evil.
I told this black NFL guy, he's retired from the NFL, I told him this. The black mothers got to tell their kids, when you get stopped by a police officer, you say, "Yes, sir." "No, sir," and you put your hands on the steering wheel.
Well,
this is what I was taught when I was a kid.
It's everybody needs to be taught that.
Exactly.
Everybody needs to be taught that,
Exactly.
and regardless of who they are and
Right.
where they come from.
Right, but it seems like more the black people
Well,
are the ones that are having the problems.
If you read statistics,
Yeah.
the number.
Well, there's more whites simply. because
Right, but
there's more whites.
statistically, there's a lot more interactions and violence in that regard. So, but I appreciate you stopping, and
Yeah, well,
and
I'm
saying
glad to see you out here because the police officers need
I agree they need support.
people backing them up as much as they can.
Thank you, sir. Here, thanks a million, sir. Thanks a million for
Okay.
stopping.
Yeah,
Check that out when you have time.
Exactly.